Okay, well, welcome to our kind of inner self-care soak today. We're going to kind of work in the beginning on the rib and respiratory muscle focus, but also that support of lifting and elevating in the chest, upper chest. So what I want you to have is at the base of your mat, you've got a rolled up blanket or towel. At the back, you have something pretty low for your right at the top of your right at the occiput. So at the shelf at the back of your skull, that's the only spot you really want that blanket or towel. You don't want it under your shoulders. Have a belt buckled up, have an eye pillow for any time in the class. You can put one across your eyes, and I'll bring up all the other props as we go on. Okay, get everything you can to help you practice today. So you're going to have your bolster center lengthwise on your mat. I want you to sit at the very end of your bolster. If you're right up against a wall, be sure that that's not going to confront you in any way with your feet. So if you need to scoot back, just in case, I want you to sit on that edge of the bolster, and then you got your roll under your calves, okay? So it's almost like you're on a sled, right? You're at the edge, and then as you lower back, be as far to the edge of the bolster, that's key. And then as you lower back, you've got your sand, your blocks, your ball, everything in easy reach. You're going to push into the heels. Actually, I'm delighted the wall is touching my feet. And then you're going to lower back and open the chest. Okay? So when you feel the shoulders off of the ground, that's key. So I don't want my shoulders, just my elbows can touch the ground. My arms could be straight open. So this upper back space is elevated, okay? So if you find that all of a sudden you have slid back and your upper back is pressing into the ground or your blanket, then what I would like you to do is, yes, that means you come back up and you shift to the edge of your bolster because we want to open up this upper respiratory tree so it comes down in towards the intercostals and you have all those kind of the bronchial tubes, all this upper respiratory tree work can happen. Okay. Now there's no, you don't have to put sand on yourself at the moment, but I would start with opening up the chest, feeling where the spine is touching and stretching out with the front rib space, and then getting your sand. And you can either have it across the ribs, you can have it on the thigh lids, ribs or thigh lids. And if it feels too much in your back, just bend your knees and feeling if that's a little bit more soothing to your lower back. Okay, so taking a few moments to settle in to this first supported chest opener, which is it's a pretty classical Setu Bandha, right, bridge pose. This would be the traditional bridge. We have the length underneath us. We have the chest openness, and the arms expanding out of us. Okay. Let the brain relax back. You can put an eye pillow on or just be with the soothing sensation of your breath. And just noticing if it's a short in and out breath, if you can start to lengthen. First on the out breath, and let that space between, right, that empty space between the in and out breath be a little bit of time. So we want to kind of relax in the gaps of the breath. Just be in that gap. So as you in breath through the nose, feel the ribs expand. And as you out breath, so strengthening the heart after that in breath the next time or two. See if you can just bring it to a pause, right? Rest in the gap. And then on the out breath, empty the lungs. Swallow Feel the chest up. The shoulders might begin to slide back here. That's the challenge on this one. So if it does start to occur, feel the upper back, not quite the upper verts, okay? But right near there, right? I guess it is kind of near there because the bolster is kind of holding in my upper back space and giving it some pressure to keep that openness in the chest. So sometimes we ask for things in the back to be supported, maybe massaged, and that feels like it's painful, but it's usually this upper front body that needs the openness, okay, versus rubbing into the back, to the bacchus. All right, take a few more moments. You can always bend your knees, and I recommend, if it's possible, come into cobbler's pose. So the sand can go up to the ribs. You know, plant it so it really drops across the rib. And then as your feet walk in, knees pointing up, but then the soles of the feet together, knees out. So you might be on that blanket at the base with your feet on that. Some of us might somehow be able to get our feet on our bolster. Yep, but that's unlikely. Okay, so still we feel where the SI joints, right, where that area gives a little bit of rotation, inner thigh, hip muscle stretching quite a bit. And then if you can let the arms stretch up, so interlacing your fingers at the roots, hands press up, breathe. Yeah, let the sand kind of calm you down if you have some weight on the body. It's super helpful. And then if the arms can start to motion back, you can keep the arms in a straightish position, but feel how it changes the stretch in your upper core when your arms motion back overhead. Let's take a few more moments here. Feeling that inner line of the spine and the pelvis stretching. Okay, relax the grip with the hands. Bring the knees to point up. The hands are going to reach to the sand if you have that. Slide it away. And now things get kind of playful here. Okay, so I walk the feet in towards my seat. I got to be a little cautious of my knees. Even if my knees turn out, that's better than trying to push them in together. So I have to have that width with the feet. And now we're going to try to move that bolster under us and turn it horizontal. So very little blanket under your head, right? Not very much. So when I lift up, I first get to the bolster with my hand and I slide back. So I'm on the blanket and I turn the bolster across under the pelvis. And I like to scoot down so that my tush, if you did slide back, then you have to scoot down. Your tush is kind of on that edge of the bolster. And your focus now is, this is what you think of as a bridge pose usually, is to bring the knees into your chest. Take a ball. If you don't have a ball, you can also use a block at its most narrow setting. Right? That works out pretty good. Or a paperback. Okay. Arms open out and knees go side to side. Feeling that there is an openness at the back, low back, and the upper back can get some glide in it now. It had a little pressure with the bolster at the top. So let the arms really be open. And as the knees rock side to side, feel the hip lift and feel that motion across the back of the pelvis. And go slow enough that you can get the larger packs of muscles to warm up. Right? Don't go too fast here. What I like to do sometimes is put a block besides each short end of the bolster. And when the knees go side to side, I have a little bumper. Okay, so I know, okay, that's about my range. And then the other side has the same range. I don't drop further on one than the other or farther down. So as you go side to side, feeling that heat into the back, then creating that comfortable arch in the lower back, let the legs swing straight up. Take that reverse action, right? You could say that to your heart because it's a good one for lowering the heart rate, blood pressure. This is a good one. Okay, so taking this pose often. Okay, now right now I've got something between the knees that I'm pushing slightly into like maybe 10% so that gravity can help that lymph just passively drain towards my chest. Okay. Now kind of feel where the upper back muscles center. So I like to have my blanket, or if you have a towel, you might fold it up one more so you have a little bit more ease in your neck. You might find that still the blanket is under kind of the shelf at the back of your skull, not so much at the deepest curve in the neck. This way you can support that length of your neck versus the rounding, okay? All right, now let's bend through the legs, take the ball out, and then as you get a belt, this is when the play begins. Here we go. So have a belt or a scarf. You want to have it so it's connected, right? So you want to have less fuss with this. So as I put the belt into both feet, whatever you've got, you're going to make a wide enough loop that when the feet are held into this inversion, and the reason we can qualify this as an inversion is because we have the bolster. Okay, so if you don't have a bolster, you can use a pile of blankets, something to get the pelvis up so the heart is lower and the head is even lower than that, right? As far as the circulation going. And some of us might learn in inversions that we shouldn't have anything under our head in the inversion, so you have a little bit more quality circulation to the brain. So if you're comfy with that, you can always go back and you'll feel like, no, a little more blood flow this direction. I like a little padding. Okay, so feet reach out, circle the feet. Okay, see if you can take the arm, so you'll bring the right arm over the left, giving yourself a hug, and then feeling the feet kind of twist and twirl, rotations through the ankles. And keep in mind as you go both of those directions with the feet, if it's possible, you want a belt that has resistance, and then you'll just hang out in it for a few moments. Take the other arm on top, cross it over, giving yourself a hug. Center the spine into the mind, right? So the idea would be we're centering the spine up into the basically the brain stem. Changing the flow of gravity in the organs, the muscles, and the spine. Okay, now relax the arm position and you'll bend the knees and reach up to the belt part closest to you. And as you slide the feet to each other, let's come into a version of a leg float. I'll call this leg float today. So if you decide to do brain float or shoulder float, you can do either of those. Some people like to put the belt so it's behind their head. So we'll lower down the left leg, but the key is it's behind your head, not your neck. Okay, so take the belt so it's at the ball of that right foot. If you've got a big enough loop, you might still need to change the length of it, right? You might have to change it. So I would say first things first, just test that. Taking the belt to the center of the back of the skull so that you can let the brain float. And you can let your head lean back into the belt if it's really slip and slidey and you cannot find order in it. You can't find order in the brain house here. You can always scoop up the belt with both hands, stretch the arms overhead, and float the shoulders. Okay? So option is to add a sandbag if you haven't already on the top of that left thigh. Okay? Stack it on the quad or even higher up. So if I have my sand on the thigh span, I want to keep that reach of the left leg, but I'm not trying to isolate the ankle and push through the heel. I'm just going to let the foot kind of nod a little side to side. And then that essential reach in the right hamstring kind of wakes up. Okay. So we're doing these good things science-wise, right, for our heart, our brain, and probably more than anything, our nervous system, right? So we're setting up the circulation event here. So if it feels okay behind your head, think of it as It's high enough at the back of your head that it feels like it's a stretch in the neck. Okay, you can still let your head relax into the belt, but of course the right hamstring will feel that. So you can loosen it up, or you can keep it as intended as you begin into the shape. Take a few moments here. For those of us in the shoulder variation, our hands are holding the belt, so I have the belt between the thumb and the index fingers, both. And as I reach back, maybe let my head nod a little side to side if my hands are holding the belt. Now kind of scan the sense of the right leg to that upper right hip. Just kind of scan how it kind of starts to open up that space, not just the hamstring, because that can feel kind of attentive to the stretch, but then the spaces above it kind of start to loosen. So let's play with that. Let's just take the belt off of the back of our head. If you have it in your hand, just reach back with the belt and slide the sand off. Let it just roll off. Hold the belt with your left hand now, and you're going to cross the right leg over to the left. And giving your hip a moment here in the spotlight. So the bottom leg, the left leg, can bend even more. You can soften that left knee and just bring the left foot closer to the bolster maybe. Okay, I don't want you to fall off your bolster, but you can feel how your leg crosses to the left side. The right leg does. The right arm open. And then maybe letting your head nod to the right. Just letting that brain relax and receive breath, right? So that's your attention, is receiving the essential ingredient. Maybe you slow it down. Maybe there's moments when you're not even acknowledging the breath in and breath out, that you can always come back to it. Okay, now bend the right knee. Take that right leg straight out to the side. Bring the left knee up and hold it with the left hand. And as that right leg reaches for that inner leg pit, right, the groin stretch. You know, this is our primary hip muscle, right, is the adductor. Most of us think we point to the upper outer rear area, and somewhere in there is main hip. But primary hip opener would be inner leg. Okay, so feeling, you know that when you do seated cobbler's pose, that's probably one of the first things you learn in yoga, right, is feet together, knees out, hip opener. So we're doing half of that here. Well, actually more than half. One leg is reaching, one leg is bending. And then as you motion that right leg up, you do whatever it feels okay. Maybe you rotate through the hip and the leg. Maybe you like to go straight up into Viparita Karani, which just means reverse action. So both feet kind of reach up. You can wag your tail. Reach towards where your seat is. Make sure your seat is not on the other side of the bolster, not on the floor. Okay, just be careful. Shouldn't slide down that direction. Should be supported. Okay, now as I shift sides, I'm going to focus on lower belly for a moment. I'm going to pull on the belt. I'm going to bring my elbows to the floor. So you might need a little more, a bigger loop. You might need less. So now I'm getting out of my loop here. Okay, and reach the feet a little downward. So my elbows are jammed up against the bolster, so I can't slide them up. I press them into the bolster. Using this as a core strengthener. Breathe. Intensity, huh? Okay. Now feel the feet press. Lower abdominals, wake up. Okay. Breathing, come back. Upping, lifting. And then when you switch the leg that's lifted, you might bring your elbows to the sides to kind of promote that back line stretch. And then as you isolate one leg, yeah, it becomes clear it's going to go to the hamstring here. So hamstring is up. You can take the belt, you can place it behind your head now, or you can just keep a hold of it. I like to put it somewhere, right? So when I take my sand to the other leg, I like to have the belt already supporting me, okay? So as I take the sand, if you have no sand, it's okay. You're still going to have a good time. So you just kind of ignore the instruction, or you can get a bag of rice or sugar or something. Seen all kinds of things used for this. Doesn't seem like that would be heavy enough, but you'd be surprised. Okay. So when you have that lift, if you look at your wonderful left knee, if it noticeably is turning a little bit out, you might just reach to your knee, maybe kind of give it a little bit of a wiggle so that you can center the patella, okay? Centered patellas. And as I lengthen through the back line of the left side, let my head lean back into the belt, my arms open out. Take a little nano bend in your left knee so it's not locked. And when in doubt, give yourself several generous, deep breaths here. And notice the amount of breath, right? Coordinating breath that gives you that ability to just take a long exhale. Maybe it's a few kind of short, then maybe you take a longer exhale. Anything to relax the heart rate. If you let that get too high, too long, right, it can cause all kinds of disturbance, right? Nervous system disturbances. So see if you can use the practice now. If it seems like the belt here just doesn't work, even after a few moments, it was fine. You can always just take it off and stretch the arms back. This is a lovely feature for the shoulders, and not everyone will agree. Some might say the other one's better for my shoulder, thanks. So you find what way to complement this reach of the left leg before we kind of try to take off into the hip. Okay. So it doesn't take long to feel the depth of the sensation, right? Into the hamstring. Even if your hamstrings are pretty flexible and this isn't shaky for you, you don't have to make it shaky. If it's too shaky, just back off, bend the knee a little more. That's fine. Okay. But you will notice that there's upper parts, even across to the side of that left hip, that are kind of waking up. They haven't been maneuvered much yet. So when we start to transition from our leg just straight up, we'll take the belt off of the back of our head. You don't necessarily have to push the sand off. It will go on its own. So as I hold the belt with the right hand, the left leg is in the belt. I start to cross my left leg to the right. Okay, the bottom leg, I like to bend it, and that's when the sand's it's just gonna go. Actually, it's still stuck on me. Okay. Yes, some of you might get excited to put sand on your outer left hip already, but if you decide you must do that, that's up to you. But encourage, now if you're stuck next to a wall, you might slide a little over on the left side of the bolster. You might decide that's perfect amount of stretch. But feel the belly trying to shift into center view, up towards the ceiling, navel towards ceiling, feeling that crossover of the left leg. Really feeling for yourself. Right? The physical stuff can be sort of a good lesson, right? In centering bones, muscles, the circulation in these areas comes back to our heart and our brain. That's what can be so good about restorative. Slowing, even if it gives us a little bit more centering and grounding, time well spent. Okay, now with that bend of the left leg, we're going to hold on firm with the right hand, take the left leg back up, Bring the right knee in, the right foot off the floor towards the left knee. And then we'll hold on to the belt with the left hand. Right hand holds the right knee. Left hand holds the belt. And I just stretch the left leg out to begin to stretch through my inner leg. And right, you might feel the leg hit the groin, not necessarily compute it with a hip stretch. That's the interesting part of these. Okay, maybe in time we'll start to notice the connection. But as you feel that reach out, let the brain settle back, breathing, receiving. If there's a little bit of shakiness, right? Because this area doesn't get that much stretch. It's generally gripped up, pelvic floor area, opposite of prolapse right now. So when you bring the knees back center, just let both feet lift up into the belt and take the feet out a little wider again one last time. Okay. Kind of the last call for the legs upside down for a little bit of time ahead. That will do some interesting excursions in the ribs and the spine. Okay, so as I hold, just let that gravitational pull reverse in my legs. Okay, so you can twinkle your toes, you can circle your feet, or just let them be still. But everything internally, right, has movement except the feet, usually on this one. And of course, moving them is fine. But when I pull on the belt and slide the feet to each other, I'm going to bend the knees and then just take the belt off my feet and come into side sage. Okay, if you're not familiar with this, you're just simply you're going to need a block, likely overhead. So you can put that behind you. I like to use 2 on this one, I guess. So I'll put them both behind. And I'm going to use a sandbag. So I'll toss it on the left side. I'm going to use a ball for me. Okay. So I'm just going to swing my knees over to the left and then roll down to my hips. Okay. All right. So let's take a blanket stack and stack it up behind you. Some people set these props up though in other directions, so it's really doesn't have to be perfect, right? So what I do want you to have though is enough height with your blankets that your neck will be cozy. So probably almost the height of the bolster. This looks like it's like a little higher, doesn't it? Well, once you're on the blanket, it does kind of mash down. So you can go 1 blanket, fold it up a couple of times. You can go 2 blankets. You get to be the decider, okay? So, all right, blocks overhead. I'm going to use 1 low setting, 1 high setting. I'm going to push them over to the right side as I look behind me overhead so that I'll have an easier time with my shoulder. We really want to arrange the body in such a way to reorganize the spaces we breathe into, right, in the ribs. So having a little height under your hand might be good for the ribs. Okay, so I got my bolster on the side of my rib cage, and I'm just going to add my sand to my right hip. And then once I lean in, I stretch over with the right arm. Okay, now the bottom space, right, for right now it's the left side. Now that may take some time to kind of synchronize both left and right sides here with the breath. So I'm still trying to find my blocks. Okay. So that's a little far to the right from me. So I want a little more stretch with that. So I'll move it back so it's kind of overhead. And then once I shift in with my back leg stretching, some of you might use the ball, some might not. And with that reach, see if you can find how it's comfortable enough in your waist. Okay. I think the final area to release here is the neck usually. So that's why so many blankets can be useful, but not everyone will agree that we need this many blankets. So if you like to go down to 1 blanket, that just feels better on the neck. Just slide it away into one. And with that stretch of that right arm, feel if you can kind of sync up that reach of the right hip back. Left leg stays really bendy. It can also scissor kick. Some people like to push out the left leg. Yeah, I find that kind of takes me away from feeling as grounded, but up to you. You settle in for a few moments here. Head relaxes down, especially if you're kind of staring at the screen, right? That's when the eyes kind of lock, and sometimes it gets a little tight in the neck. So anytime you can let your eyes maybe close, maybe lean into the blanket purposely, and then just let go of that effort of pushing your head down, right? Just let your head relax. Okay, now as we let the right arm have that reach, okay, we're going to stretch the right arm open. Maybe you roll in the back of your head. Maybe it doesn't feel right for you, so that's okay. But just kind of notice how the span from the chest central out to the right armpit area, it can feel as tight as when you stretch the inner thigh, right? These two different areas, armpit and leg pit, not much different, right? With their tension cycles. I mean, they're tightly kind of pressed into the center body most of the day, right? Okay. Now come out before you get pins and needles and that numbness in the hand. Okay. All right, let's come back. We're going to actually lie back in between the sides. So I want you to take your bolster on top of one blanket. If you're a little bit fussy on this one, which I have to admit I sort of am, I like a little more height under my bolster than just a flat, just the blanket at its lowest kind of fold. I like to roll it up. You could also put a block under it and your blanket, because you're only going to need one block for what we're doing now. So if you decide, oh, I'll put a block as well, you can add a block, you can add a book, you can add things from your house. Okay, so we're going to lie back. If you want a block, just one is probably enough for where we're going. And we're going to just simply use the bolster as a ramp for our back. Sand free right now. Put it away. And let's take a ball. If you don't have a ball, you can use like a rolled up blanket. Again, you can use, there's a couple things you can use, like a book. You could actually maybe use your sandbag here. I just don't recommend use a block because it's just going to hurt. The corners of it don't feel good. Have something that is easy to go to the upper outer left thigh, cross the right ankle to the left knee, figure four, and then let the hips, they stay kind of central but starting to move a bit, and you're going to shift both knees over to the left, so you're on the side of your left foot, leaning and holding your right knee with the left hand. Feel where that stretches on the upper outer right thigh. Yeah. Okay, you might need a block. You might need something under your right foot or your left knee. So if you feel like you're just a little too off balance, not feeling like you are supported, you don't like being kind of in midst of balance, wavering, you can always put your block under your right foot. Okay. I kind of like the not having my foot on something today. It seems like that's the kind of thing right now. It works for me. So if your foot is on the floor, that's probably too far. So that's why you might move your ball. You might roll it a little further into the buttock area. You might put it, if you go farther down the thigh, it's probably going to mean your foot's going to come down. So holding the balance. So if I place my hands on my hips, they are kind of centered here, right? Hip headlights are up. Left hand holds the right knee. I try to get my abdominals to kind of shift to the right, kind of like a typewriter shift, right? Shift to the right. Right arm is out or back behind you. Breathe a few moments here. You breathe into what you've got. because you can only breathe into what you know, right? Your body, your existence. Okay, now if the right rear doesn't feel the floor very well, it's going to feel something now. So let go of the knee and then shifting the knees back center. Let's take the ball. And if you don't have a ball, you would do windshield wiper. So just an FYI, what I'm doing is in figure 4, and I place the ball in my right glute. Okay, so I'll demo an option without a ball. Now with the ball, I would roll across the glute, massaging the glute. If you have like a tennis ball, you could do this with the tennis ball as well. I guess Taryn, you showed me what you had. That would work like lengthwise. You could put it besides your glute, so not horizontal, but on the side band. That would work pretty good. It might be a little intense though, a little shocking. And if you're without the ball, you just windshield wiper feet as wide as the mat, or if you're not on a mat, just a little wider than hips distance, side to side, windshield wiper through the glutes, the hips, okay? And those of us with the rolling give a few more meaningful glides across the glute, across the musculature. It is muscle, okay? And then once you come back to the right, like you're pushing across the muscle belly, like deep into there, so it lifts up. And then as you guide back to center, just place the ball so it's right next to your right hip, okay? So your back centers on the bolster. If you need to scoot back up on it, do so. It might just be a little tips that you move back. Left ankle to right knee, knees to the right, and then hold on to your left knee with the right hand and guide into the stretch here on the left rear, okay? This is where you feel the circulation. So for me, the ball is nice because it's a responsive surface. It definitely has an ability to respond to your, it's sensitive. It's different than a block. Blocks aren't sensitive, okay, to your needs, right? They're not going to mold with how you change your range of motion. They're just going to block you, okay? That's their job. So a ball's a little bit better. You can also roll into it a bit. The softer therapy ball is going to have more give, okay? And it's going to speak to the skin and the surface muscles a little different than a harder ball, right? It's going to help glide that dermal layer and to bring more hydration to the tissues. Okay, now the left arm can stretch back. It can also rest besides you. Either way is fine. But notice where the sensation is now in the left rear. It may build. It may stay the same when you start here. A few moments, slow, deep breath. Okay, now moving the knees back center, hips distance, take the ball to the left rear and uncross the left leg from the right. And then as we get our left hip kind of ready, this is the hip we're going to go into side sage as the top hip. So you do want to kind of feel before you get sand in that area, just that heat. And circular, right, since it's circulation that we're working on, you might find going circular around the hip is a little tough. So especially with a bolster or something under your back, you're kind of pinned into this position for the spine to be elevated slightly. So as you cross fiber that motion, right, you're going cross fiber pressure, gliding and shearing into the glutes, trying to get some glute free here. Free the glutes. All right. So feel how you press and go across the muscle belly, almost to where it feels like it's in a part of the rear. You're not going any further, right towards the gluteal fold. So then you go back across. So you kind of are swinging into the glutes here with that pressure. Yeah, they don't get this type of touch often, right, with that deeper massage. You can kind of be your own masseuse here to go into that glute glide. And then when you step into your left foot, see if you can roll to the right hip, take the ball over to the right side, roll, and then coming up to turn your bolster across your mat. Blankets are there, and maybe they have to be reorganized. Okay, so I got a couple. I got a block on the other side, and I'm going to move it so it's actually right smack dab in the center. Works pretty good for me. But it's a different shoulder, so you might find, oh, this is my vulnerable shoulder. Maybe your block is a little further to the left. You might not even know where it's going to be till you get there, where you're going to want it. So as I lean in, I put a ball under my left knee. Some of you might decide, no ball, that's fine. Sand on the area you were just massaging, right? So if you don't have a sandbag, don't worry. Go into the shape anyhow. But as I lengthen to the side, I can also feel how important this is for my back health, right? Any side stretches are really, really good for our back muscles, right? So the paraspinals, right, is the sides of the spine. And as I reach over, you might be on the back of your head, you might be on the side, even learning something here about your neck and your upper vertebral spaces. If you ever get into these side stretches and the hip bone is really unhappy, it's too much pressure, you can always add padding, right? A blanket, a towel. That's always something you might have to do that from some days more than others. So with that reach of the left arm, breathing, feel the ribs move. You might have to purposely even touch your rib cage and ask it to wake up. Right, don't keep the breath high up in the chest. See if you can wake up the rib cage. And as the spine centers, breathe. Okay, now with that reach of the left arm, opening through the chest, stretching the left arm out, counter spin through the armpit zone. And make sure the knees are in a good bend, right? They're softening enough so that it's not going to be harsh on the lower back. You want to have bending legs here. Even if you need to bend the left leg more towards the right leg, that's okay. Whatever's going to help you get the side area to stretch. Okay. So when we shift out of this side sage, right, if you're with me on this one, okay? So what we're gonna sample a bit of just moving from the sideline into the front of the thigh, right? The thigh lid or the hip flexor. So you're gonna move your sand off to the side, but you can feel kind of this connection. It's like this dip though that goes into the front kind of valley of the hip. We're going to try to get this area to stretch long, okay? So when you turn to the right, if you're not already out, okay? You're awake. All right, you can either use your bolster across the thigh lids or you can use a block set. Okay, so this is something I'm just kind of testing in my practice, so don't take it like you got to use your blocks here, but it does give you a little more definition. So my feet are at the wall. If you're not at the wall, no worries, but it gives you some, gives you feedback, I think, into your muscles a bit. And when you stretch forward, your hips can lengthen down onto the bolster or the blocks, right? Blocks, here we go, block. block. They could be this way. You might try it that way. Okay, so it's going to be just like the bolster, right? But it's a little bit more defined. So I'm going to push them back so I can get on them. Well, I'm not that tall, I guess. Okay, so kind of find where it gives you feedback into your thighs. So what you might also do is come down on your elbows or your elbows, but see if you find you can keep this resistance for a few moments. So here's the part we're going to start working is our upper back. So trying to get my shoulders back. What I'm going to do is layer my knees down, turn my hands out, turn the hand out. See if you can get your shoulders back. And then, they're your shoulders, so get them back. Don't let anyone take your shoulder away. Okay. All right. So the bolster, I like it just as much as the blocks, I've decided here. But feeling that length in the belly, belly. Okay. Come back to table, hands under shoulders, knees under hips as much as you can tell. Come into cat pose, chin to chest. And then arch the spine. Feel the hips reach back and noticing how the movement dialogue is from your chest to the spine. You might think of cat-cow as just spinal and pelvis movement, but there's got to be a chest to create that arch as much as it is important to keep the pelvis moving. Last one. Okay, pushing back with the hands so the hips move back. Okay, and if you got blocks, bolster, you're going to need your bolster, but not your block. So take a reach back with the hips. And then as you come back on forward, I want you to have your bolster under the core, so it's straight underneath you, and reaching forward. Now coming in towards more of a tummy time. So I'm going to have the bolster far enough down so that my thighs are supported, and you're going to feel a little bit like, yeah, superwoman, Superman kind of a feel. So the arms are back. They could be on the sides. Yeah, you could even, put your hands onto the legs and try to get the shoulders back. You don't let anyone take your shoulders away. Okay, now lower down, knees relaxed. Put the bolster a little bit farther in front of your rib cage here. So I'm going to settle down, and I'm going to bring my forehead down to the blankets or blanket. If you don't like two, you can go with one. Elbows out to the sides. Relax your glutes, the buttocks, the knees rest. Okay. Now I want you to give a feel if you can bend through the right knee so the heel draws towards the rear. Reach back to the foot. If that's not happening or not accessible today, then don't force it, right? If it just isn't in reach, it's not in reach. So you have your elbow back out and your foot towards the rear. Those of us holding onto the foot, just feel the heel draw towards the right side of the rear to the glute. Okay. Door number one is here. Okay. Door number two is just slowly lift your head up, just up, not trying to look forward, just up, and try to keep both knees down. That's the challenge, right? Try to keep the knees down. Okay, now switch sides, right elbow out, head down, left knee bends, left heel towards the rear. Hold onto your foot. Maybe it's different on the second side. Your knees are wide enough with a bolster between that you might find you can do this when you normally can't, right? So it's not that big of a surprise, but it still can be challenging. Okay, now as you start to lift your head just up, try to keep the knee down. My knee goes up, right? Instantly. It's like insta lift. Okay, go back down knee. Okay, now as you come back through, hands under shoulders, foot back, gently lift, come back to table. Okay, I want you to take the knees in together. If you need a blanket under your knees, by now you might add one. But I want you to bring that right foot forward to the right side of the bolster and then just pivot your bolster across the mat. You can do this little simple set with or without your bolster. So if it's kind of in the way, you don't like it there, you can always move it. I like to push the bolster back so it's under the top of my, well, actually at the base of my left thigh, just above my knee. So I like that. I even like to slide my leg on top of the bolster to help me get an extra stretch into my hip. So the hands onto your blocks, okay? And feel when you press in, you're going to lift up through the arch of the spine. Let the frontal left hip bone press down. Yeah, this, you might need a blanket under your knee, I guess, on this one, right? So if you feel like you need a little bit more padding, go ahead and add that if it's not the bolster. Okay. Now with the hands supported, take an extra moment here where the chest tries to lift up to the front of the spine, and don't give up the back muscles here. So let's take a moment here where we let the right foot, the front foot press down into the heel. If you need to scoot your foot, like scrunch the toes and move the foot a little farther out in front, that's okay. You might need that for your back. Okay. So we're going to lean into our hands. We're going to lift up the back knee. And yeah, this could be a big step forward. And then see if you can step on forward to both feet. Yikes, I made it. Okay, standing forward fold. Hands could be dangling. They could be holding the elbows. They could be reaching back to your blocks. It can be kind of fun to reach behind you on blocks, especially if it's kind of disorienting, like you're not used to this reach back. Give it a try. All that circulation to the brain. So good. Let your head nod side to side. Let your neck release. If that's scary for you, you can always have your head lifting. Some people, this is just too much change in blood pressure. So do what feels okay for your circulation. Okay. Step the right foot back. Okay, take a reach. Okay, now if you need to do something different in between, like a half sun salute, that's fine. Perfect to do. But when you come into this bit of a kind of a mid-height lunge before we come down on the back leg, just kind of feel how you organize the reach of the left thigh forward and the right heel back, whether it's at the wall or not. Okay. Start to lift up through the upper chest area as the right knee lowers down and down onto the bolster, and then feel that arch through the spine. Okay, well, this side came together a little better for me in sensation in my back. So for whatever reason, the sequencing works better on sometimes if you step back into a lunge versus pushing off your feet going forward. So, trying all that different ways is probably useful. So your right foot could be touching the wall, just scanning the spatial outline that you have. This is all you got, right? Just feel your spatial outlines, feel the thighs. Use padding if you need it under your knee. Don't feel like you have to suffer here without any support. Just be leaning forwards now. Okay, and then we're going to come on forward, bring our hands onto the ground, or you can use your blocks, and we're going to walk over to pigeon pose. If you're not a pigeoneer today, that's okay. I'll show you a modification. So you're going to walk your left foot toes, heel to the right, and then lower down on the bolster, which is under the left rear, right? Okay, if you're not going to opt for that and you're in a lunge, you can either step forward into both feet and then take a seat on the bolster. Okay, I'll show you where to go. Those of us in pigeon, though, come down on the elbows. You can use your blocks under your elbows, right? You can have blocks here, blanket here, or just come all the way down. Hands in prayer position. Breathe. Okay, those of us not in pigeon, okay, you are going to take a seat, perhaps, if that works okay for you. Left ankle crossed forward of right shin. Take a lift. If you need blocks under either thigh or a ball, that might be useful. What I like on this would be to put a block under my left foot. Okay. Have something under my right knee and then lean forward. So that's your variation from the other pigeon style. This is still pigeon. It's just seated, forward fold. Still has the same concentration on the hip, right? The muscles, the circulation from that left side of the rear up into the back, kind of swirling into the lumbars, the curve, from the hip into the lumbar. The lumbars, I guess. Or the lumbars. Okay. All right, taking that forward fold a few more moments. Your choice, seated on bolster or part of your seat on the bolster. And if you're trying to pigeon and you're like, oh, it's difficult, you can always use a ball or an extra blanket under your left rear. You can just tuck it under there. It could be, again, something, a little bit more manageable. I think the ball is really manageable, but if you don't have it, you can use a blanket and just stuff it in, and that will help ease the intensity in the hip. Okay. Anything to soften it, right? Okay, feeling the arch. Okay, take a few more moments. Those of us that are kind of deepening the pigeon pose might walk our hands over to the right side. So kind of kitty corner to the right, keeping the left hip reaching back to the back left corner, kind of back into that zone. And if you're seated, you can do the same thing. You can reach over to the right. Okay. If you're not sure, what does she mean? Those of you seated with the block under your foot, there's got to be somebody out there that's doing this. Would be reaching over to the right. All right, now when we switch sides, those of us seated, sitting bones focused, we can just switch the leg that's on the block. That's easy. Those of us in pigeon, right, we'll take the ball out if we have that and then bring the right knee up front. You could do a cobbler's pose in between if you want, just to find that alignment through the hips, and then bring the right knee out and the left leg back. Okay, so that would be second side pigeon, right leg. And kind of get cozy with the bolster, right? Feeling how you touch down onto it. Maybe you use a ball. You might find, well, that just doesn't seem like I need it, but you can always try it. And if it feels good, just use it. Okay. So kind of find where that balance is into the upper body. So you're going to lean forward. So it emphasizes the circulation, isolation, right? Circulation, isolation in the hip. And as my spine centers forward and down, I'm in a forward bend. Take a few moments here. I think having the arms downwards versus kind of reaching to the left side on this one, I think they're both pretty good, but you really have to decide what feels like the intelligent, your physio intelligent choice for you in the moment. So if it's like you're getting a little straight out with your hip when you move to the left, but some of us like that, like little extra insight into our hip zone. But that's where we're kind of going, right? We're going to get a little bit more inverted again and then do some deeper hip before we go upside down. Okay, so feel that left foot. Maybe it reaches back. Maybe your left knee bends and draws towards your seat. Okay, and those of us that are in the seated version, right, we're going to maybe walk our hands over to that left side. You can have a block under your left knee, but you reach over to the left side. Okay. Now I want us to find a pretty, just very clean seated twist pose. I don't want to make it with a wall right now. Let's just keep it kind of pure and simple, but really get organize how the spine lifts up. So when you come out from this pigeon or seated variation with the block, just take a seat on your bolster. I'll kind of kitty corner myself here. So let's go without the sand. Let's just see what happens here. So I have the left leg. It's close to my bolster, my left foot, and I'm going to cross the right leg over. If you're so used to a sand on your left thigh, which I have to admit, I sort of crave that, You can put your sandbag on your left inner thigh. You can add it, okay? If you're not sure, just get a sandbag, place it on the left inner leg, okay? Now turn to the right side. So you're gonna rotate. Your right hand might just lightly touch the fingertips on the floor. You might reach back to a block, but just feel how you kind of slink into this rotation in the rib cage. Feel where the arm reaches down. If it doesn't seem that it's going to organize this way for you, you can just hug the right leg in and feel that lift of the chest. Try to get that inner lift of the collarbones. And feel that these bones they can move, right? They can go in motion with breath. Ribs, upper ribs, collar. Okay, now just hug that right leg with both hands interlaced, just sitting up. Let your head tilt to the left. And then over to the right, just feeling your head tilting brains. Okay, come back center and change the crossing. So very simple, kind of prim and proper spine care. So I bring the sand if I want on my right thigh, but again, you don't have to. You can just have the right leg bent, the foot to your bolster. The left leg crosses over, sand maybe. And then when I turn, I try to keep that wisdom from the root of the spine, right? Feeling right kind of just above your pelvis. And then as you hold on to that left leg, you can just hug it. You can bring a little elbow to just above the left knee to that side of the leg. And then the left hand comes back. And don't be surprised if one side the hand touches down with just complete ease and grace, and one side it's just a little bit clunky to get down with the hand. So just noticing where internally you can find that wisdom to lift up at the heart, to rotate at your neck, and press with that right arm. This is, I think, pretty clever. How we work with this pressure in the lats, the rhomboids, this upper back circuitry, and then we try to lift up the heart. Yeah, there's no mistakes, right, with all these things in the body that kind of help us organize that inner lift. Okay, now taking another breath here. Usually this kind of pose begins when you want to get out, right? Because a twist is so circulation-wise so active into the organs, squeezing, waking up the circulation, that rhythm of digestion, right? That's kind of the key for twists. And then as we come out of that abdominal kind of massage, we come out and we're going to go into our back to kind of open up through the belly after all that squeeze. Okay, so uncross, sand goes away, and then we'll just take our bolster to the wall and take our feet on top. All these things that you have around you, you can just sort them around once you get on your back and let your belly relax. Okay, so I think I'm going to do my bridge without my blanket, actually, because this is a little better for my neck, for anyone's neck for that matter. Would probably be better. So I got a couple blocks and I have a ball. Now, if you don't have a ball, place a block between the knees at its most narrow setting. Okay, so if you got that block, it's the narrow. Okay, and then as I push into my feet, I'm going to lift my hips up and stretch the arms overhead. Okay, but feel that sweep of movement through your back. Then you can use a blanket under your head, but not under the shoulders. Try to keep it just at the brain, but it's really up to you. So when you lift up and you guide your hips up, also feel how you fall back into your shoulders, and then how you meet the back muscles as you glide down the spine and the hips. Okay, take another 2 or 3 with or without the arms moving. You can always have your arms down by your sides. I like having the arms go with it. Okay. I think it carries the rhythmic kind of tone of the stretch in the core. Right, usually you're going to in breath on your lift and out breath on the spine going down. Okay, last one. Unless you're already done. It's okay. Center the belly, let the belly relax. Remember, we did several twists here, so I want you to let your abdominals purposely rest for a few breaths before we take a deep hip crossover. Okay? So you can bring the knees into your chest and then take the ball out, bring the feet back to the bolster, windshield wiper the knees. And as the knees go side to side, your emphasis now is going to be to take that left leg and either cross it over the right and let the knee swing to the right side. You can have a block under the knees, or you can also add on the ball at the sacrum. Okay, my preference, however, is to have my bolster on the side of my mat, and not all of you do. I know some of us like the bolster under our feet. This is one where you need something under your head for the exchange up through the spine. I want to have some padding in the upper connection right where my spine meets up to the brain. So my right hand to the left leg, if you have a sandbag, add it there. Add it where the hand was probably going to stay. And likely that support kind of adds to the extension out of that left side of the spine. Just taking these final poses slow. And feel the perspective in the full body. Feel the arch, feel the hip. Bottom leg stays a little bendy. Top breath goes all the way up, probably to the collarbones, right when you breathe at the top. Try to fan it out. And then as you switch sides, take the shift in between, either with the legs stretching down, windshield wiper, or constructive rest. Just let the knees rest together for a moment. And those of us with the feet on the bolster will be kind of easy. You can just cross the right leg over the left and let the knee swing to the left with gravity. Some of us will move our bolster to the other side. And you can scoot around on your mat so that it becomes a little bit more enjoyable. Hopefully some of it is. But when you bend through the leg, the inner joy, right, is to stretch through the thigh land, the thigh-landia here into the hip-landia. And then when I add the ball under, well, it's not under me, really. It's just to the side of the back of my pelvis, right between the curve at the base of the spine to the pelvis. And then we take a sandbag gradually. If we have a sandbag, with some weight to the outer right thigh. And we let the right arm stretch open. Yeah, and rather than like noticing, oh, the side is so much easier, it is possible, right? So feel in the present what you can attend to in the moment here. Just that's it, right? That's all you got. Just this moment. Whatever's ahead, we don't have a clue here. So we're going to stay with that presence of breath. Breathe in wellness. That's a constant for a restorative, and it comes back and forth in our mind. Maybe not even until the end, but and see if you can find that movement at the skin and the surface muscles with breath. Present state. If you notice the heart rate picking up, just take a slow breath and then exhale, letting it go. Yeah, moving the ball, you have that. Shifting the pose to get upside down. So upside downness is going to be kind of the final nest of focus here. So if you want to bring the knees into the chest at this moment and just circle the outer rim of the sacrum, that might be kind of comforting before we get our hips up. And you don't have to have your hips up on a bolster. You could just use a folded blanket on a wall space or up next to a chair or a bed or anything that you can get your legs up onto. But I recommend that you roll to the side of the hip first, and then you come on up, and you can kind of feel how you move into hip, into the lift of the torso. So when we come up against something that we can get our height on, that's the key, right? This is kind of that force of elevation that is so helpful for the nervous system. So we want to take the time to down regulate here at the end where we reverse the flow back to the brain. So if you've got an eye pillow, this would be a good time to grab that or something you can put over your eyes for that curtain of darkness. And when you sit up to the bolster, yeah, some of us, this is a hard one to get our legs up. It could be hamstring related, it could be hip related. So if it ain't working right with the bolster, use just a blanket this high. Just fold a blanket next to your wall space or your whatever you're putting your legs up on, which could be chair, like I said, couch, bed. It doesn't have to be a wall. But we want to get the legs up and the pelvis slightly lifted. That's the inversion effect is I have my pelvis up. Okay, otherwise I'm not going to get the points from the universe on inverting. Someone in the universe will say, you are not inverting correctly. You need something under your hips, my dear. Okay, so have that lift, have that reach of the belly. This kind of pulls the belly a bit. It's definitely your primary abdominal strengthener is to get your legs upside down. So you're doing that just by being in this. So if you have sand, you'll place it across the feet. If you're sandless, no worries. This feels great without sand too. Having weightless legs can feel really good. So yeah, your feet get stepped on a lot. So if this one feels better without anything on the feet, just be weightless. Okay. Eye pillow, towel, anything you might put across the eyes. But as you formulate that reach in the skin of the face, right, letting that soften, you might let the eyes rest, what you think is a resting eyes, and then let your sand slide it up across. If you got a little sandy eye pillow or just eye pillow made of whatever. Okay, place it across. I've seen some people put a block behind head and then they put a sandbag on the block and then place it over their forehead to calm their mind. So that's another one you might use at some point today. I could send a picture of it from the textbook so you can get the idea of how to set that up. So for now, letting your arms stretch out to goalpost. Or they can go a little lower if the heart rate really is still pretty speedy. And just reverse the effects of gravity on our heart and our brain. And relax the eyes. If they even try to kind of look up, even with your eye pillow or your towel, see if you can reassure them to rest back. It's just moments, right, really, in the day. Feel the belly lift and lower. So feeling that cascading effect of that lymph drain. You might not viscerally just think, oh yes, my lymph is draining, but you can feel the busyness at the legs, right? They're quite busy reversing all that blood from the feet to the heart. That's a key part of this. The feet could get really cold on this or a little bit of a tingliness. That means you know that the blood's moving from them to where you want it to go. It's fairly obvious what's happening, but it's interesting how it changes the circulation to the throat, the thyroid, endocrine glands here. So you got two places that the waterfall goes, right? The belly and then down into the throat. Okay, last few moments. If you decide, well, I'm not going to come out of this one, I'm going to stay in it a little longer, you can. You can stay in it as long as you like, depending on your commitments here. But as I feel the back line lengthened, I'm just going to start to shift my feet off of the wall. I'm going to be a little cautious that my tailbone actually presses into the bolster or blanket. And that can be kind of a weird concentration because you're not used to your tailbone this direction most of the day, but it is an arch right in the tailbone. So just feel that platform of the pelvis as your base, and then bending the legs and taking the sand off or tossing it overhead. And the pelvis, right, is the center of gravity. This is it. This is your root, okay? So bring the knees to your chest. You can take the feet to touch the wall. You can let your eye pillow either drop off or you can just let it go when it's time. But hug it in, hug a back, hug a leg. Right, for some of us on our hugger mugger bolsters. All right, and then as you go towards the side, you're gonna roll and take some time to come up and just take a seat. Take a seat at the bolster, the blanket near the wall. Get support from the wall. See if you can kind of push back to that firm help, right? A little bit of help. And then bring the hands up to the heart center. Feel the fingers spread out. Notice what's revealed right inside. And then let's take the support from all of us in this virtual community. Take a deep breath in together, breathing in, well